MovieWeb.com.
Okay, well, having dealt with this for as long as you have, I mean, have you found closure with everything that's happened, or is it hard to live with it? I mean, doing interviews like this time and again, talking about it.
You know, it's funny because the word closure comes up a lot. That's you have no reason to know this, but it's Andrew's father says this a lot in interviews, that there is no such thing really as closure. But I know what you mean. There may be. I feel some sense of, at least I've done the best I could with what I had. You know, like when life gives you lemons, make lemonade sort of theory. I feel like maybe I don't know how much more I could do to kind of change things and get the story out there. So I feel at least good that I did the best that I know how to do with what I've got, and that does offer some solace, I guess, there too. I'm still fairly upset about what happened, and obviously, and I will continue to be, particularly until the laws are changed to rectify it, because at present, the government of Canada has had the information that they need to act on it in their possession for at least 2 years now, and nothing has been done. So I'm anxious I'm organizing a screening of the movie for Parliament sometime probably after the first of the year when they reconvene, because they're doing an election right now too, and they're in the midst of change. So I'm hoping I can get them to sit down and take this a little more, take this seriously. A senator from Alberta did show up to one of the Canadian film festivals recently and saw the film with an audience of his constituents, and so at least we're starting to make a dent. I don't know. That's a hard one. The thing, honestly, when you ask about, difficult about talking about it, I'm used to talking about it now in a sense, or doing interviews like this is fine. The thing that I found that I hate the most, like my least favorite thing in the world to do now with this movie, is at film festivals, when you're in a social situation, like you're at the opening night mixers or parties or whatever, and which is wonderful, you're meeting other filmmakers and it's great, but as any filmmaker who's ever been to that can tell you, 40 times over the course of just any event, somebody says, "What's your movie about?" And normally it's like, it's a comedy about this, or it's, whatever, but it's like you have to keep rehashing the story of your friend's murder as if it was a cocktail story 40 times in one evening, and you just feel sleazy by the end of the evening, if you know what I mean.
No, I totally
So I mean, just talking with people who have seen the film and are interested about it, that's fine, but when you're coming into a completely cold situation where it's supposed to be fun and a party and everyone's, "Hey, what's your movie about?" It's always like, I feel like they're going to think I'm rude if I say, I don't really want to talk about it. It's like, oh, what's his problem?
Yeah.
So that's, as much as the festival tour with this movie has been incredibly rewarding and really wonderful, I'm looking forward to not being asked that question anymore.
Well,
so yeah.
What I was going to say is, it's weird, is because you have this personal story, yet you also have a film, and it's kind of like split down
I can't complain about it, because I put myself in that position to be asked that question, so I certainly cannot complain. It's my own damn fault that people are asking
it's
me
a
that
weird,
question.
what weird, I'm trying to think of a word, but I can't think of a weird dichotomy,
sure,
I guess.
Yeah.
So to have those two equals, now we have a writer at our site who just listed Halloween films, and I wanted to ask you about this, and they put horror movies on there, and he put this movie on there because he'd also seen it.
Horror film?
Well, as a horror film, but he talked about how it was like, it's a real, and all the events are real in it. It's just a movie that like makes, just your stomach drop at a certain point, and just like, and it's horrifying. I'm wondering if you kind of can see it as that type of film.
That's interesting. There was a review on Ain't It Cool News that reviewer, what was his name? Mr. Winston, I think. They all have like code names on. His quote was, he said, "I cannot emphasize this enough. This movie frightened and disturbed me more than any horror film I've ever seen in my life." And yeah, it's interesting because it's not intended as such, but the events of what happened on a day-to-day basis were completely horrifying. Of even having to live through, even when I went out to Newfoundland and was visiting with Zachary that first week in 2003, I mean, Andrew's murderer was walking around free and could show up at the house at any time, and who knew what she could do. And there were so many of Andrew's school friends who were still living there in Newfoundland who were terrified for their lives that when she was walking around free. His ex-fiance was living there going to school, and she, had a restraining order against her and everything too, but she didn't go anywhere by herself for like a year and a half because she was under constant terror. And the one time she did decide to go out by herself without an escort, she went down to the mall, walked around the corner, and there was Shirley. And she, just even to this day, even though that situation doesn't currently exist, this young lady I was talking about, like when somebody comes into the room like to something on her, she's like, I don't know if it'll ever go away, just because she was so traumatized by those circumstances. So yeah, it technically is a horror film in a way, I guess. My approach to it was like I always saw it as like a real life Frank Capra movie, which sounds completely opposite because it's basically about some really, really wonderful people to which something really horrible happened, but the thing that saved them and kept them going was the love that they had put out in the world that came back to them. And so yeah, it is interesting. It kind of has elements of like a Capra film and a horror film. It's an interesting way of saying it, but